Hey everyone, Casey Currie here on my podcast, Where to Next. And today we're going to do something a little bit different. We actually are getting ready for Off-Road Expo this weekend in Pomona. And one of my good friends and influencer of the industry, Randall Speir from Dana Corporation, is with me in the house. So Randall, thank you very much for coming on board.
Of course, dude. Would miss it.
So I want to give everyone a little lowdown. Randall, I've known Randall for many years now. He started, where I knew him from was Toyota, and then he moved over to Dana Speir, where now he is a senior manager on the aftermarket side. And, Randall does a lot for the industry, goes to many events, has to hustle, and he deals with the OEMs, and he also deals with the aftermarket. So he's got himself a very unique job and has to deal with a lot of different people. So Randall, thank you very much for coming on. My biggest thing on the podcast is getting a little bit of the behind the scenes, the people that help me out in my racing career and my career in general. And not only that, but people that do a lot for the industry. And, with all that you have going on in your life, tell us a little about where you came from and what you're doing now.
Yeah, I came in from LAX last night. Live life on the airplane these days, traveling everywhere because everyone's having fun all over the world, right? And so you got to be involved. You got to be in it, right? You can't be an influencer if you don't understand what people are doing and bring solutions to things the challenges they face, and have a good time doing it. So originally, I'm just a kid from Texas. I grew up born in Austin and lived in and around Austin. Grew up there, and got bit by the automotive bug. And my dad had a big 70s Ford pickup truck, and I kind of grew up on dirt roads, right? So I kind of fell in love with that aspect of the automotive industry. And my dad had his own automotive repair shops growing up, and so much like you, I grew up in with a family that was very involved in the automotive industry, and so my fear was very low to go in and take something apart or try to make it better. And and then I've chased that my whole life. I mean, it became a passion, right? So I'm very lucky that I've been able to enjoy my time in the automotive industry, and it's great. So that's why I do it. It's something I love to do. I pinch myself a lot. It is a job. I do get paid, and sometimes it's not always pleasant. But the weekends come around, and all that busting butt all week pays off, and you can go hang out with some great friends. Because I think that's the great thing about the automotive industry. It doesn't matter where you come from or, what color your skin is, what gender. It's an automobile, and we all love it in some form or fashion. It touches all of our lives, and to go out and have fun. That's what you focus on. So it's really cool to live that life.
Yeah, and previously you were at Toyota. I mean, you've obviously done some racing in your past. So why don't you give us a little bit about the racing? I mean, I know there's not a lot, but I mean, just to give people, so they can have some a feeling of where you came from on the racing side of it. I mean, you've definitely been around racing.
Yeah, I am a mechanical engineer. That comes as a shock to some people because I actually have a personality. But I knew growing up, loving racing, going to the short track with my dad, the motocross, being, seeing all that, wanting to be involved. I knew I'd have to use my brains to get there. And so, I went and got an engineering degree. And from there, I chased my dream. And I spent a couple years in the heavy truck industry, actually, working for Peterbilt International. And the whole time I worked there, I would moonlight with a NASCAR truck team over in Fort Worth. So I was living in Dallas, working in Dallas, and I'd work from 7 to 3 or so, then run over to Fort Worth and work on the truck team till midnight, 1 o'clock in the morning. And didn't tell them for a year that I was an engineer because I wanted them to trust me with the tools. And I earned their respect, and I think that really helped me coming from that background of busting your knuckles and really getting in with your elbows and knees and working on stuff, not just dictating to people what to do. I think that's been a strong point of how I've been successful in my career. But what happened is I actually moved out to California and went to work in the Sport Compact series. And I left a great corporation in Peterbilt, PACCAR, and that started the racing career, motorsports career, I guess is a better way to put it. And from there, I actually moved back a year later. I moved back to Dallas. I went to work with the crew chief that I was moonlighting with because he got a deal to do Busch Series team at the time. And that's when we were with Hulligan. And he also had the motocross team going on at the same time. So I spent a year there. And, the racing world is very interesting because it's a lot about ego and it's a lot about money. And, when people run out of money, then you're down the road finding your next job. And so it became a kind of a roller coaster back and forth. I actually moved back to California and I was changing tires at the time too. So I was not only a team engineer doing race strategy, prepping during the week. I actually started going over the wall, and doing physical, just getting involved. And so when I moved back to California, I was doing the West Coast sweep of NASCAR. And I actually got picked up by a truck team and moved out to Virginia, to Martinsville, and was doing the NASCAR Truck Series for a while. And again, the roller coaster continues to ride, and that came to an end. And I moved back to California and see a theme here, and got involved with Saleen when they were just launching the S7R, which was the race version of the S7. Steve got it homologated, and the first customer was Orica. The first customer was actually Zach Speed. So my first, activity for working with Saleen is I ended up going to the Nürburgring. I mean, that's a historic race. Yeah,
yeah,
right.
That's
that
rad.
was incredible.
Yeah, that's awesome.
So I was the race car powertrain engineer, and I ended up basically living over in Europe. And I was managing, the powertrain and drivability of the vehicle. So I was doing the trackside support testing, working with the drivers to get them comfortable with the vehicle, make the vehicle perform the way they felt it should, but also help them become better drivers. And, worked with Orica in France and Zach Speed over in Germany. We did win a championship with Orica. And that really, that was amazing. That world, experience, that global experience, it was amazing. And again, the roller coaster continued. And after that, I ended up at TRD, and I was running their off-road program. And that's where you and I met, right? Yeah. So you were racing in Pro Lights at the time. Yeah. And I was working with, the Toyota teams, and we ended up winning a championship there. We won the Borg Warner Cup, the Crandon.
The big one.
So that's my background there with the racing side of it. And then, that was back, that was years ago. You think about the economy, when the economy took the dive in 2008, and, that was tough. Racing got kind of thin then, but I got involved with in the vintage car series, the vintage car racing, and those guys, enjoy their cars. They're affluent, and they've got the means to keep things going. So, I stayed active, in what I was passionate about. And, I worked at Mr. Gasket for a while, some products that I used growing up, so it was a very, very interesting time. I was very proud to be involved with those brands, those true aftermarket performance brands. And then, again, the roller coaster is very interesting in motorsports. And then this opportunity came up with Dana. And, they were getting back into the aftermarket as an organized group. And there was nothing really established for the motorsports, the performance side of it. And so this has been kind of my, my brainchild, what I've been entrusted with to grow. And so for almost the past 5 years, I've been working in, with Dana to grow the product line and to, help the aftermarket. And, Dana is a 100-year-old manufacturing engineering company. That's really what Dana is. And, they build great products. And so it's nice because I can trust in the products that we engineer and we manufacture. And it's just my job to get them out there and, make them seem cool. They really are cool, don't get me wrong. But, it's hard to say that, drivetrain is a sexy subject. A lot of people don't even see it, right? It's underneath the vehicle. But it's ultimately very important to how the vehicle performs and what you're doing, especially in the things that we do in our off-road racing.
Yeah. And on that note, let's take it to the Dana side. just for the people that don't know, like, why don't you explain the difference between an OE and aftermarket, and then really what, like, I mean, on the Dana aftermarket side, like what you do and what Dana aftermarket is all about, right? I mean, it is something totally different than the Dana OE side, especially with the performance axles and all the other, Spicer products and stuff like that. I mean, why don't you explain to that, to the people that don't know what, I mean, obviously we all know what the Dana 60 is from every car back in the day, but I mean, obviously it's the things are changing, and the aftermarket is bringing the name back into the limelight as far as it's something cool again, right? And I mean, why don't you kind of explain to people what the aftermarket, versus OE, and then really where you guys are at as far as the aftermarket products you make?
Yeah, I think it's very interesting because I think the aftermarket gets kind of a bad rap. I know that if you look at the aftermarket in total, I think a lot of people think it's cheap replacement parts, and so I think there's kind of this stigma that aftermarket isn't, they're not, the quality isn't that good, right? You're just looking to get something cheaper and stuff like that. But from the OE standpoint, I think the aftermarket looks at the OE with a stigma as well, that the OE is not good enough, right? That's why there's aftermarket, right? So there's all this turbulence around, who's who and who's better and what's what. And, I guess I can say this, right? I mean, as an engineer and going to work for Dana, it makes me very proud. I mean, Dana is an engineering company. We build products that have to go hundreds of thousands of miles. I mean, you think about not only from the light vehicle, which is what we really, that's what we know and we're involved in, but you think about commercial vehicle and you think about these things going a million miles, right? I mean, that's incredible, right? So there is a ton of engineering, there's a ton of testing that goes on to make these, to make these products last that long. And you came out to Toledo, to headquarters. Yeah. I mean, you saw the lab. I mean,
incredible.
Our headquarters is a lab. I mean, it's a scientific lab of testing going on 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. Everything from bending big beam axles to metallurgy, electron microscopes. It's crazy the science and engineering that goes into what we do. The beauty is that gets transferred into our aftermarket products. So the OE is really building things to an OE specification, right? So, when the OEs are building a vehicle, they're balancing a lot of things. Obviously, they want it to be strong. They want it to last, a certain amount of time for the life of the vehicle. They're working for efficiencies, like, weight is a big deal now with fuel efficiencies, right? If the vehicle's lighter, it uses less fuel to move it, but it can't be weaker, right? So there's a lot of material science going on out there. And that's what's cool about the aftermarket side of Dana is, like, we can leverage a lot of that technology and things that Dana's learning and technology that they're developing into the aftermarket. So we can take something and go beyond what was intended for the OE specification, because, well, some of us like to do different things, right? I mean, we like to go off-roading, and for the most part, a lot of these vehicles that are built, they weren't built to really have 40-inch tires, and
Absolutely.
and go go run Hell's Revenge and go down to Baja, Mexico, and run in places that it's not a smooth paved road. So that's the nice thing about working for Dana and being able to have faith in the products that I represent, that I'm trying to tell people, hey, look at what we're providing here. This is going to help you go out and have a great time with your friends, with your family. Go out and have a safe time. Get back home. Yeah. You're not broken down on the side of the trail looking like a donkey. You've got great products. You're going to go out, have a great time, and come back. I mean, you recently went down to Mexico with a bunch of guys in Jeeps, and a couple of them were running our aftermarket Dana axles, and that's what you need, right? To go down and have a good time and not worry. Something's gonna break. Yeah,
and on that, I mean, and on, just so everyone knows, like the what you're talking about mostly right now on the aftermarket side is, I mean, you do have the Ultimate Dana 60s, which are a bolt-in replacement axle for JKs, and you have now the JL, and then, I mean, as far as what Dana, I mean, on the dry shaft side of things, you make U-joints. That, just so everyone's clear of exactly what Dana, what they would make for products, that, especially in the Jeeping and off-road world, is Spicer U-joints, the Dana axles, on the aftermarket side, right? And now you're the capabilities of buying,
right, Yeah, I mean that's Dana started with the encapsulated U joint. That Clarence Spicer was a real dude. He's a car guy like us, and he saw an opportunity there. He patented the first encapsulated U joint, and that literally unchained the automobile. So there's no more chain and sprocket. And I always tell people, I mean, could you imagine driving on the 405 today and an 18 wheeler's using a chain and a sprocket? That thing let
That
go.
would be wild.
That would
Yeah,
be
that
death
would
and
be yeah,
destruction
no kidding.
everywhere. So so that's where the business started, back at the turn of the century with the U joint. And then it just evolved, right? It evolved from the U joint, with that, allowed us to use what the nerds, the engineers call prop shafts. We call it drive shaft.
Yeah.
And then from there, it went into the axle shafts. We've been involved with transmissions, transfer cases. I mean, the guys that are, the old Jeepers will remember the Dana transfer cases. Locking hubs. I mean, all kinds of components around drivetrain that's Dana's business, right? Going beyond that right now, I mean, we're doing electrification. I mean, we're doing, some wild stuff out there that's coming. I mean, there's going to be a day when you and I go hit the trail and they're going to be electric Jeeps or electric vehicles, electric axles. I mean, it's going to be crazy. It's coming.
Yeah, that's wild.
So that's Dana. I mean, like I said, Dana's it's an engineering company. I mean, really technology company, and then we utilize that technology to build the best products that we can for whatever application, whether it's OE or aftermarket. And specifically with with the Jeep market, I mean, we've been partners with the Wrangler platform since its inception. So it's over 70 years now.
It's always been Dana.
Yeah,
Oh,
it's
rad.
always been
I
Dana.
did not know that. That's cool.
So we build the axles that come from the OE. We build the drive shafts. But like I said, you're going to do something with the vehicle that's outside the specifications that were that it was intended for. You need better. You need a different product, and that's where the Ultimate Dana 44 comes in. The Ultimate Dana 60, like you mentioned, these are bolt-in axles for a Wrangler that increase their capability in some form or fashion. Usually it's it's around the tires, because the bigger tire, the bigger the torque, the more weight. It's a lot of stress on the axles. So you want to be able to handle that stress, and that's why we created these products.
Yeah. No, yeah, absolutely. And everyone, I mean, the products do bolt right in. It's a super easy process. And really, even on the JK, I have two JKs with Dana axles, and to be able to bolt on 40-inch tires without having to do any custom fabrication is super nice. And on that note, on the tech side, I get people asking all the time. The new JL Wrangler comes with Advantech. It's not technically a Dana 44. I mean, for the guy that's listening, and I'm one of them. I pay attention a lot
Right.
of what's going on in the industry. There is a new technology out in the ring and pinion, and in reality, the new JL does not have a Dana 44 in it. It's got the new Advantech technology. Do you want to? I mean, and to dumb it down a little bit. I mean, can we explain what the new technology is coming and what it's bringing, and the capabilities for the future that can make this thing work in smaller ring and pinions and the efficiency? But you want to give the lowdown of, I mean, what it really is in the new JL?
Yeah, I mean, we've basically been running around on 1950s designs when it comes to straight beam axles, and there's been some iteration along the way. And about I think a decade ago, a group of Dana engineers were set aside to really reevaluate the beam axle, and start with a fresh, clean sheet of paper and say, hey, what could we do better? And the iterations of growing that turned into Advantech, which is now underneath every Jeep Wrangler. And the number specification does stand for something. I mean, there's with the capability of the axle, but the Advantech is a new technology that looks at the axle as a system. So it's not just one thing, although the biggest thing that we all see is the ring and pinion, right? So we were able to, through material science. I mean, it's crazy how quickly things change nowadays. It's almost like your phone. It's done in 9 months to a year. You got to get a new phone. It's old technology. Materials are changing that quickly, and not only like metallurgy, but also in plastics and rubber, right? So seal technology. And then modeling software, right? I mean, look how far we've come with modeling software and able to sit down and analyze things. And so it was kind of a perfect storm, given the age of the axle design, where we are with advances in technology, and just as the brain trust of Dana putting all this together, we found a lot of efficiency gains, in something that I guess if you just looked at a JL versus a JK and you look at the axles, really from the outside, they look pretty similar.
Yep. They do.
But inside, there's a lot of little differences that add up to a big change. So the ring and pinion, will start there. We were able through material science modeling to figure out a method, a way that to bring efficiency to the ring gear. So it's actually we were able to achieve the same or better strength with a smaller ring gear. And why is that important? Number one, weight, right? So if it weighs less, it takes less fuel, right, to power it. It also helps with ground clearance, right? So if you have a smaller ring gear, you have a smaller center section, you got more ground clearance, as off-roaders, that's a good thing to have, right? And then moving out from the ring and pinion, you think about the bearings, right? The things that these things are riding on, right? So we actually changed the spacing of our bearings, the type of bearings we use, not only, for the pinion, but also out at the wheel ends, right? Because there's all kinds of friction right there. So again, we're saving energy that's not wasted in heat, right? It's actually when you put the torque to the tire, you're getting more torque to the tire, right? And it's taking less fuel to do it. The seal technology, like I referenced, these seals are amazing. I mean, there's like hundreds of percents of change, in the capability of the seal to maintain, right, the fluid, inside and not let it leak out or let stuff get in, and actually it's less friction, right? So it's amazing, right?
So no drag.
There's no drag, or a lot less drag.
Yeah.
Hundreds of percent less drag, 100% capability to withhold the seal for, longer than the previous materials. And when that all comes together, we've called that Advantech. So, every JL Rubicon has a 44 Advantech front and rear axle, and then the non-Rubicons come with a new version of a Dana 30. Really, it's the same ring gear package, but the rear is a what we're calling a Dana 35. So now we're getting into the metric measurement of the ring gear, right? So you got like a 210, 220, 200, so you have a 200 millimeter ring gear as the Dana 35, and then you have a 210 and a 220, which are in the Rubicon, which we're calling Dana 44 Advantech. So that's, in a nutshell, that's kind of the technical background of it.
I mean, and as far as that technology goes, do you think they'll ever go up to a Dana 60 model, or is that? I mean, I know we can't talk about it. I don't really know. I'm just, the end user. Obviously, everyone always wants bigger, better. I mean, I've seen JLs on 40s on stock axles, so in Moab, but I'm not saying that that's what everyone recommends. But hey, look, I don't really know. I'm just, obviously people are always asking for what's next, what's coming. Is there something exciting down the pipeline? SEMA's 2 months away, and if it's something that we don't know, we don't know. It's all good.
Yeah,
so.
I mean, for sure, there's bigger Advantech axles right now. The Ford Super Duty, we have the front and the rear axles now. Previously, if we got Super Duty guys that listen to this, the Dana 60 is pretty classic axle for the front, and then Sterling was the axle for the rear. And now Dana has, been awarded the business to provide the axle for the rear. So we've got a 275 millimeter and a 300 millimeter, ring gear, in the rear of the Super Duties. And, that could find its way into something underneath the Jeep one day, or, maybe wink, wink.
So the technology is out there. Yeah. So the technology's out there. So you guys, I mean, even in the Fords, then, I mean, obviously the Ford Super Duty line is, meant to tow a lot. So the technology, it can go anywhere. I mean, even just the technology in general, right, is there.
Yeah.
So that's,
From
cool.
platform to platform.
Absolutely.
And, there's some new platforms coming down the road we've all heard about, and there's going to be some Advantech technology underneath those that the off-road industry is going to love.
That'll be awesome.
So yeah, I mean, SEMA's coming. We're going to have, some Advantech axle technology out there at SEMA, for those guys that get out and check that out, or, read the magazines. It's coming. You're going to see it. So, I mean, interestingly, this is probably the first podcast that's been done about Advantech.
So I mean, but if
You
people
know?
could, if people want to go to SEMA and see what they want to see, they can go to the booth, and you're gonna have Advantech at the booth.
Yeah, for those guys that that work in the automotive industry and come to SEMA, for sure they could come by the Dana booth and check out what's going on there. And for those that come out and see the vehicles, we're gonna have a couple vehicles out around in the lots where they're publicly accessible and you can go and check it out. It's SEMA's got a lot of things going on, and certainly the cool car aspect is just off the hook, right?
Yeah, no, that's for sure. So, no, it's good. But now I want to get back to Randall Spears here on the I just want to do a little tech because obviously we have you here in the room, and people are always asking, right? I mean, Jeep does a good job of always promoting that they have a new technology, but to get somebody to talk about it a little bit, it's cool to hear that there is change and things are evolving, right? That it's not the same technology from the 50s that are keep getting reused and reconfigured. So it's cool to see that. But as far as for Randall, I mean, the Randall I know, right? I travel 50 weeks a year. You travel the same. I mean, for yourself, do you like what you do? Where you go? I mean, all the events you do a year, is it all Jeeping? Is there off-road? Is there cars? I mean, what does Randall do in a year that puts him on the map that people can, if they know Randall, they can go up and talk to him? I mean, where would you see Randall, in 2018 or 19?
Oh yeah, I mean our travel schedules are out of control, and a lot of it, it involves off-roading, I mean, but I love hunting, I love fishing, and off-roading is a way to get there and maybe to some of the cool spots, right? The secret honey holes. But I came out of motorsports, I came out of racing, I see that, this Advantech technology is going to go into those, arenas as well. And so you could find me out, at a World of Outlaws event, going to some sprint car races, definitely road racing. I miss that. Even to stock car racing. I mean, there's another, industry that, is as simple as those vehicles seem. I mean, and you've been around them. There's a ton of technology. I mean, people spend, there's millions of dollars going into making those things even more efficient because that's how you beat the guy next to you. Besides just being better, like you are, Casey.
I try hard.
So you're gonna, anywhere there's motorsports, that's where you're gonna find Randall. That's where I love to be. It makes me happy. I meet great people. We have great time together. That's where you're gonna find me. And it doesn't matter where in the world it is. I mean, it could be, maybe down in South America where, somebody's been going recently, or, Australia. I mean, going up in the snow, do some ice racing. I mean, like I said, anywhere there's motorsports, you're gonna find me, hanging out, getting involved, being involved, driving. It's just a passion, right? And I think a lot of people share that passion. And if you share that passion, then I'm sure we're just gonna hit it off and have a great time.
Right. And as far as Jeep events, any obviously you go to Moab, you do a lot of events on the East Coast as well. That obviously, I'm a West Coast kid, and I go to Jeep Beach. I've been to Bantam once, but I mean, you going back to, as far as in 18, I know you went to some of them, but I mean, as far as the East Coast events, I mean, is there places that, if they're going to find Dana, are they going to find you, basically? Is that kind of where I'm going with this? Is like,
oh, for sure. Yeah. Well, yeah, I'll continue to go to Jeep Beach. I mean, that's a great event. And in Jeep, and, it's not that it's a heavy off-road event, right? People drive up and down the beach, and, the look of the vehicle. I mean, that's just as important. They do a lot of mudding out there, which, you and I don't, you're cleaning mud off for the rest of your life, right? Yeah. But I'm very impressed. I think that, like I referenced earlier, being, coming back and forth, living in California a lot. I mean, people automatically assume I'm from California, ironically. And I've been very impressed with the off-road, culture on the East Coast. And, there's tons of shows, the Smoky Mountain Jeep Invasion. There's great off-road parks, out on the East Coast, and just like a couple weeks ago, I went and ran Windrock down in Tennessee. And, it's challenging. I mean, it's different. It's different than what we, experience on the West Coast with the rocks and a lot of grip. There's trees and there's mud, and there's
Both
the
are
rocks.
dangerous.
Yeah, no,
Both are
both
dangerous.
and the rocks move a lot. So the line changes as you're waiting to go through. If you're third in line, by the time you get there, it's already changed twice, right?
Yeah.
So it's very challenging. And I recently went and wheeled from Maine all the way down to Pennsylvania. And I mean, that was some of the hardest off-roading I've done in my life. I mean, that was incredible. And, I really can't wait to get back. So, I mean, I know there's a lot of events, have you done a Jeep Jamboree?
I've done well, only in California.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I got major issues when it comes to.
we should just figure out our schedules to
Right,
go
no
maybe
kidding.
hit a couple of these up.
Are they
on
fun?
the East
Do you have
Coast.
fun? I mean, are the Jeep Jamborees fun?
Yeah, of course they're fun. I mean, there's, like I said, I mean, Michigan, I mean, there's some sand dunes in Michigan. I mean, it's incredible, just the diverse terrain across the United States and the different challenges that it presents. Going out to, the Badlands, the off-road park there where, King of Hammers, the Ultra 4 guys have gone out there before. I mean, you got Dirty Turtle. I went out to Dirty Turtle in Kentucky. And I mean, and that's a great thing, right? You can go wheel and just, I mean, what's Kentucky known for? Bourbon.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
you
yeah.
can go hit all the bourbon, distilleries, after you go wheeling.
After.
And,
Yeah.
And make a great time of it. So, East Coast, you're going to see me out there. The West Coast events are classic and epic. We've done Moab, many years together. I mean, we've done Rubicon together. We've gone down to Mexico. So, those are all things that, it just becomes an annual event that you always look forward to it. You don't get bored, right? It's amazing scenery, amazing technical challenges, and then a lot of fun with your friends. So, that's where you're going to find me.
Yeah, that's awesome. Nope, you definitely do a good job. So, I mean, really, that basically will wrap up this episode. But Randall, I really appreciate you coming on and speaking. My biggest thing is there's influencers out there that have a passion for what we do. Obviously, you can anyone can go probably make more money in real people jobs, but to live in this aftermarket, racing world that we live in, I mean, it's fueled by passion, and it's cool to to have people around, especially me, that have the passion and want to see to us get the aftermarket into the real world, I guess you could say. You want the soccer moms to have their Jeeps lifted, and you want to have the people that drive their Jeeps on a daily basis to know that they can upgrade, that they can get bigger tires on their Jeeps, they can do more than what's just out there and what they have on it. There's shops around the world now that you can go and buy anything you want to buy, and really having people like that just want to see the whole industry grow. It's important, and obviously I want to have good people around me at all times, and having yourself and your wife and just the whole team at Dana, it's phenomenal. So I mean, I'm stoked you came on. Thank you very much, and hopefully all the followers, if they ever have any questions, to be able to reach out to Randall or anyone at Dana. And the technology is moving forward, and obviously Dana is growing rapidly, so it's great to be a part of it. Thank you very much. And episode 6 of the podcast is all over. So where to next with Randall Speir.